The sound I remember most wasn't the engine. It was the way the snow screamed when the blade hit my wall like the mountain itself was tearing fabric. I didn't even finish yelling before it happened. 1 second, I was waving my arms, boots sliding on ice, trying to get the operator's attention, and the next second the steel dropped, the packed snow detonated outward, and the wall I'd spent 2 winters building split open like it had never mattered at all. I froze, not from the cold, from the understanding that whatever happened next was no longer under my control. Inside the house, I could see my wife, Ellen, standing at the kitchen window. She had both hands pressed against the glass, knuckles pale, breath fogging the pain in short, uneven bursts. Ellen doesn't run. She hasn't been able to for years. Her lungs barely tolerate stairs on a good day, and the cold makes everything worse. We planned for that. We always did. That wall wasn't a project or a hobby or some stubborn mountain man fantasy. It was the line between our house and a slide path that had already claimed 2 cabins further down the ridge before we ever moved in. And now it was gone. I slipped running toward the machine, yelling, "Stop, stop, please stop," but the snowcat operator didn't even look at me. He just followed the hand signals of the woman standing uphill, calm as if she were directing traffic instead of deciding who got buried tonight. Her name wasn't Lydia in this version of my life. I'll call her Marlene Crow, head of the Alpine Crest Association, HOA president, permanent smile, expensive gloves, the kind of person who says your name a lot when she's about to say no. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "You're one house," she said, not even looking at me, eyes fixed up the slope. The upper tier is the priority. That's when I felt it. Not heard it. Felt it. The mountain shifted. Anyone who's lived long enough in avalanche country knows that feeling. It's subtle. Pressure rerouting. Weight redistributing. Snow doesn't just fall, it chooses, and when you interfere with that choice, it doesn't argue with you, it remembers. I followed the new line with my eyes, past what was left of my wall, past my roof, across the access road, and up toward the ridgeline where the expensive homes sat tucked into stone and glass. The ones people like to photograph for real estate brochures. The ones everyone said were untouchable. Marlene thought she'd chosen who to sacrifice. She didn't realize the mountain had its own opinion. The blade dropped again. I shouted that my wife couldn't evacuate. I told her Ellen wouldn't survive a slide or a power outage or a night without heat. I said the wall wasn't blocking snow, it was breaking momentum, slowing it down, bleeding off force like it was designed to do. Marlene listened politely. She always did that. Let people talk until they tire themselves out. Then she pulled a folder from under her arm, flipped it open, and read like she was reciting a grocery list. Effective immediately, your property is under association emergency authority. Services may be suspended. Access restricted. Interference will result in fines and a lien filed against the home. She looked up then, finally meeting my eyes. "This isn't personal," she said. "This is about protecting the community." The community, it turned out, meant her donors, her friends, the people who hosted winter fundraisers with wine tastings and heated driveways, the people whose houses sat above mine. Behind me, Ellen coughed, soft, controlled, trying not to panic. Marlene didn't turn around, didn't ask, didn't acknowledge her at all. "The snow needs a path," she said, gesturing uphill, "and it won't be through our homes." The machine roared back to life. They didn't leave after the wall was gone. That part surprised me. The snowcat idled in my driveway like a threat that hadn't finished speaking yet. 2 association trucks blocked the road on either end, hazard lights blinking through the falling snow, painting everything in red and amber pulses that made the whole scene feel unreal, like a drill that had gone too far. People spread out across my property, boots crunching where they didn't belong, snapping photos, measuring angles, acting like my land had suddenly become evidence. I told them to get off it. One of them smirked and said, "Emergency authority, read the notice." They taped it to my door while Ellen watched from inside. Bright red header. Safety violation. It accused my wall of interfering with natural snow migration. Claimed I'd created an artificial hazard that threatened the community. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't lethal. Marlene stood a few feet away, speaking quietly into her phone, already moving on. I caught fragments as she walked past. Mitigation complete. Yes, before nightfall. Before nightfall. When I stepped between the machine and what was left of the wall, one of her guys blocked me. Not touching me, just close enough. Sir, don't make this worse. Ellen knocked on the window once. Soft. Panicked. And someone laughed. Not loudly. Just a short breath of amusement when the wind gusted and she staggered back from the glass. That laugh burned something out of me. The last bit of doubt. The last excuse I was still making for them in my head. They weren't careless. They weren't mistaken. They knew exactly what they were doing. And whatever was coming down that mountain now was coming because they aimed it. The HOA meeting happened less than 2 hours later. Virtual. Mandatory. Attendance tracked like we were clocking into a shift instead of dealing with the fact that a mountainside had just been pointed at my house. I didn't bother changing out of my boots. Snow was still melting onto the floor as I sat at the kitchen table. Ellen wrapped in a blanket on the couch behind me, pretending not to listen but flinching every time the wind pushed against the siding. The wall was gone. We could both feel it, like a missing tooth you keep poking with your tongue. Marlene opened the meeting the way people like her always do. Calm voice. Professional smile. She thanked everyone for their flexibility during a weather event and framed the destruction of my wall as a proactive safety measure. Preventive mitigation. Necessary action. Temporary inconvenience. When I unmuted myself and started to speak, she muted me again. Evan, she said, using my name like a warning label, please don't turn this into something it isn't. Something it isn't. That phrase stuck. 2 board members talked about liability exposure. Another mentioned precedent. Someone else asked whether insurance would cover any residual impacts. No one mentioned my house. No one mentioned Ellen. No one mentioned the fact that our living room now sat directly below a freshly carved slide chute. Then Marlene delivered the verdict. By unanimous board consent, the wall was deemed non-compliant. Any attempt to rebuild would result in fines, suspension of services, and a lien placed against the property. Someone asked what would happen if the snow shifted again. The upper ridge has been secured, Marlene said without hesitation. Risk elsewhere is minimal. Minimal. That was the word. I scanned the faces on the screen. Neighbors I'd waved to for years. People who had asked me last winter how I reinforced the foundation. People who knew Ellen's condition, who'd brought soup during hospital stays and nodded sympathetically when I said we couldn't travel in winter anymore. No one spoke, not because they agreed, but because they understood the message. This could happen to you too. After the meeting ended, the notices started coming in. Emails, automated calls, warnings about trespass if I interfered with authorized equipment. The system didn't shout. It pressed. Slow, legal, relentless. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I went out to the garage and pulled down the old topographic maps I'd kept from my service days. I wasn't looking for revenge. I wasn't even looking for blame. I was looking for truth because something about what they'd done didn't sit right. Not in my gut, not in the math. It didn't take long. The map Marlene had circulated didn't match the county archive. The angles were too clean. The fall lines too straight. Natural snow doesn't behave like that. It disperses. It wanders. It spreads its energy out unless you force it otherwise. I overlaid the files on my laptop, zoomed in, adjusted opacity, and watched the truth snap into place. The original slide path curved wide across the slope, bleeding force naturally before it ever reached lower elevations. Safe. Manageable. The revised path was narrow. Forced. A chute. And it ran straight through my property. The wall I'd built wasn't blocking snow. It was absorbing momentum, breaking force the way highway barriers do, the way engineers design things to fail safely instead of catastrophically. Without it, the slide didn't just threaten my house, it accelerated past it. I followed the line downhill with my finger until it stopped at a label I'd never noticed before. Private subgrade storage. Reinforced. I stared at it longer than I needed to. Everyone up here knew about Marlene's wine cellar. She bragged about it at fundraisers. Temperature controlled. Imported stone. Bottles older than most of the staff at the lodge. Millions buried beneath her home like a shrine. That's when it clicked. They didn't destroy my wall to protect the community. They destroyed it to protect her. I sat there in the cold garage, heater clicking uselessly, and finally let myself think the thought I'd been avoiding all day. If the slide came tonight, I might not be able to save Ellen. I laid out blankets by the door, packed the emergency sled, checked the headlamp batteries twice even though I knew they were fresh. Outside, the wind shifted and the snow changed with it. Heavier now, wetter, the kind that bonds fast and fails hard. The storm warning escalated. Watch to advisory. Advisory to warning. Just before dusk, headlights crawled up the access road. Chains screamed against the ice. Hazard lights cut through the snowfall like a distress signal. A county engineer stepped out, not with a clipboard or a lecture, but with instruments. Laser rangefinder, snow probe, tablet loaded with slope data. He took 3 steps onto my property, looked uphill, and stopped. Who authorized the cut? He asked. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I just pointed. He followed my finger to the raw scar where my wall had been, drove the probe down into the snowpack, pulled it back out, checked density, then did it again closer to the new channel Marlene's crew had carved. His jaw tightened. This wall wasn't diverting snow, he said quietly. It was breaking momentum. He overlaid the county avalanche control plan with the HOA's revised map. The difference was unmistakable. The original design spread force wide. The HOA version narrowed it, compressing pressure into a single line. If this lets go, he said, tapping the screen, it won't slow down. I asked him where it would go. He traced the path past my house, past the road, past the retaining cut the HOA had installed, and stopped. Into whatever's buried here. Subgrade. I told him about the wine cellar. He looked uphill again, then at the sky. Snow was falling thicker now, clumping together in heavy flakes. Someone understood exactly what they were doing, he said, and exactly who they were protecting. He radioed for an immediate halt order, requested reversal, requested enforcement. The reply came back thin and distorted through static. HOA jurisdiction dispute. Order pending review. No forced action without board consent. He lowered the radio slowly. Paperwork before people, he muttered. I asked him what happens now. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, now we document and we pray the mountain hesitates. Marlene didn't hesitate. She called an emergency community meeting in person, mandatory, held at the Mid-Slope Lodge. Loud, crowded, a place she knew would be hard to leave quickly if things went wrong. By the time Ellen and I arrived, the storm had escalated again. Wind drove snow sideways, piling it against the lodge walls in dense waves. The roof creaked under fresh load. Marlene stood at the front, posture perfect, voice steady. She spoke in numbers. Percentages. Risk tolerance. Emergency mitigation always involves trade-offs, she said. Our responsibility is to preserve the greatest value for the greatest number. Someone asked about the lower homes. Risk exists everywhere in winter environments. Someone asked about evacuation. Too late for that now. Ellen's fingers tightened around mine. She was exhausted. Cold. She shouldn't have been there, but Marlene had forced the choice by making this meeting the only place information was being shared. I stood. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just asked one question. Did you know that tearing down my wall would redirect the slide directly into my property? The room went quiet. Marlene smiled, thin and rehearsed. We acted on expert models, she said. No simulation is perfect. I nodded once, then asked another. Did you know that once the slide passed my home, it would accelerate toward what's buried under yours? For the first time, her composure slipped. Just a fraction. Enough. The county engineer stood before she could recover. This redirection increases fatality risk, he said clearly. This action was unauthorized and violates county avalanche safety protocols. Marlene snapped back, sharp now. This meeting is not for debate. The mitigation stands. That's when the sound changed. A deep hollow whomp rolled through the lodge, vibrating the windows, the kind of sound you feel in your ribs before your brain catches up. Every head turned. That's slab settlement, the engineer said. It's loading fast. Phones buzzed across the room all at once. Avalanche warning. Extreme. I looked at Marlene. Her face had gone pale, but she gripped the podium like it could hold the mountain in place. The upper ridge has been secured, she said louder. Then the mountain answered. The first crack cut through her sentence like it had been waiting for permission. Not loud at first, just sharp, clean. Then another, deeper this time, followed by a vibration that rolled up through the lodge floor and into my legs like something massive shifting its weight. Snow rattled loose from the rafters. Someone near the back gasped. Someone else swore. No one laughed now. The county engineer didn't hesitate. The release zones failed, he said. It's moving. Marlene opened her mouth again. No one looked at her. The lodge went quiet in a way I didn't know a room full of people could go quiet, like everyone had the same thought at the same time and didn't want to say it out loud. Then came the sound you don't forget. Not a roar. Not thunder. Wait. A low, heavy vibration rolled through the mountain, slow and inevitable, like the ground itself exhaling. The lights flickered. Phones buzzed again. Avalanche release confirmed. People surged toward the windows. I pushed forward just enough to see past shoulders and winter coats. The chute Marlene had carved was doing exactly what it was designed to do. The snow wasn't spreading. It was funneling. A white mass tore free from the release zone, compact and fast, screaming downhill in a single focused line. It passed above my house close enough that I felt the air displacement through the glass, a pressure wave that made my ears pop. And then it didn't stop. It accelerated straight toward the upper ridge, straight toward Marlene's property. Behind me, I heard her whisper, almost to herself, "That's not possible." The mountain didn't care. Someone had already pulled up footage from earlier that morning. The lodge's main screen flickered, then filled with video of the snowcat blade tearing through my wall. There was Marlene standing beside it, pointing uphill. "Pause it," the engineer said. The image froze. He overlaid the county map in real time. Original flow. Wide dispersion. Then the HOA version. Tight. Forced. Aimed. This wasn't mitigation, he said. This was redirection. A tech from a maintenance crew spoke up, voice shaking. "We warned them. We told the board it would overload the slab." Marlene spun on him. "You were instructed to follow orders." The engineer didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You knowingly increased risk to lower properties," he said, "and you concentrated mass toward a subgrade structure." The live feed switched to an exterior camera. Snow slammed into the retaining slope below Marlene's mansion, piling higher than the windows in seconds. The first crack echoed through the lodge, concrete failing under pressure it was never meant to hold. Then the hillside gave way all at once. The avalanche punched through the reinforced entrance to the wine cellar like it was paper. Stone fractured. Steel doors folded inward. The ground collapsed as the snow poured into the underground space, pressure multiplying with nowhere to escape. On screen, racks exploded. Bottles shattered by the hundreds. Glass bursting. Corks firing. Deep red wine flooding across white snow in violent contrast. Decades of curated luxury erased in seconds by the force she'd tried to outsource to someone else. "Shut it off," Marlene screamed. "Turn it off." No one moved. Outside, sirens wailed as responders raced uphill, too late to save the cellar, just in time to witness it. The engineer turned to the room. "This was preventable," he said, "and it was deliberate." Marlene opened her mouth again. The sheriff stepped in front of her. "Ma'am," he said, "calm and final. You're relieved of authority effective immediately." She looked around, searching for support. None came. On the screen, the snow finally settled, heavy and irreversible, entombing the cellar she'd sacrificed others to protect. The mountain had finished speaking. The lodge stayed quiet after the feed went dark. No cheating, no relief, just the low hiss of heaters and the sound of wind battering the walls outside. Deputies guided Marlene to a chair near the front. She looked smaller now, wrapped in the same expensive coat, hands shaking like everyone else's. Neighbors came to me in ones and twos. No speeches, no grand apologies, just broken sentences. "We didn't know. We should have said something. I'm sorry about Ellen." Ellen leaned into me, exhausted but steady. Her breathing had evened out, color back in her face. The danger had passed. Not because anyone saved us, but because the mountain chose a different path. The county engineer moved through the room, checking names, answering questions, speaking in clipped phrases. Someone brought blankets. Someone passed around water. The fear shifted, drained out of us slowly, leaving something lighter behind. The sheriff put a phone on speaker. Based on preliminary findings and live evidence, the voice said, "We are initiating a formal investigation into unauthorized avalanche mitigation and endangerment." They listed the actions plainly. Redirection without permit, knowingly increasing fatality risk, abuse of emergency authority. A deputy handed Marlene a folder. She didn't open it. The Ridgecrest Alpine Association is prohibited from conducting any safety modifications without third-party engineering approval and county oversight. Miss Crow is removed from her position pending charges. No one clapped. The call ended. The engineer set his documents on the table. Maps, overlays, photos, evidence that didn't raise its voice but didn't need to. He looked at me. "Your wall can be rebuilt," he said. "Properly. With county backing." I nodded. That was enough. Outside, the storm eased just enough for the lodge to stop groaning. Through the windows, the slope lay quiet again. Snow distributed the way it always had before someone decided to own it. The chute Marlene forced was gone, buried under its own consequence. A county worker asked where I wanted the temporary barrier placed. I pointed not at my house, but at the natural line the slope had followed all along. "That's where it wants to go," I said. He nodded like it was obvious. Later, as deputies led Marlene out, people stepped aside, not out of fear anymore, but finality. I wrapped Ellen tighter in my coat and felt the mountains settle for good. Looking back, the wind wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was how close everything came to going the wrong way. If I'd acted on anger instead of restraint, if I'd blocked machines or threatened people, this would have ended with handcuffs instead of accountability. The outcome didn't change because I was louder or tougher. It changed because I stayed inside the lines long enough for the truth to hold. There's a difference between standing your ground and letting rage drive the wheel. One is slow and frustrating and lonely. The other feels good for about 5 seconds and then ruins everything. Evidence lasts longer than emotion. Photos don't shout. Records don't panic. Paper trails don't blink when someone with power tries to scare you into silence. So if there's one thing I'd pass on, it's this. Don't assume you're powerless. Keep what you receive. Notices, emails, maps. When something stops making sense, slow down. Bring in the people who know more than you. Communities don't survive on bravado. They survive on boundaries people agree to respect. HOAs, boards, titles. They only have power when no one questions them with facts. The mountain didn't care who was rich. It didn't care who was in charge. It just followed the truth of its own weight. And honestly, that's what saved us. Now I'm curious what you think. Was this justice or just nature correcting a bad decision? Would you have fought harder sooner or stayed quiet like most of the room did? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them all.